this was another phone call in my kitchen in Laurel Canyon. Rolling Stone in New York said, or maybe they were San Francisco, I don't know, but they called me and said, what are you doing this afternoon? Could you go right down to Motown Records and photograph the Jackson 5? They're down there answering fan mail. And they said, we need some really good shots of Michael. And I didn't realize it, but they needed it for the cover of Rolling Stone. So that was the cover of Rolling Stone. He was very, very nice guy. I mean, I worked for teeny bopper magazines and took a lot of pictures of the Jackson 5, and he was very cooperative, very friendly, but very, very quiet. The other brothers were real, outgoing and laughing all the time. He was kind of quiet. Okay, but a lot of rock and rollers. I mean, a lot of things like Jim Morrison, certainly Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix. They're very quiet. They express themselves on stage, so they're more they live internally in a way. People don't always realize that. This was another cover for Rolling Stone. Same thing, phone call in my kitchen. What are you doing today? Could you get on a plane and fly right to Palm Springs or go to Truman Capote's house? We need a cover of Rolling Stone. I thought, my God, Truman Capote, I've studied about him in college, reading his short stories. I was so thrilled, and he opened the door and he was real friendly. And, because he knew what I was there for, and so we spent an hour photographing and talking, and it was really, he was very gracious. And as I was leaving, he said, wait, I have an idea. And the pictures I took were all him in the garden leaning against statues and things and out by the swimming pool. He said, I have an idea, and he ran back in and put that hat and scarf and that heavy coat on, and I'm standing outside the front door ready to leave, and he's standing in the doorway with this. It's 114 outside, and he's got that on, and I took a few pictures, said goodbye, and that was the cover, which is often the case. It's usually the last roll of film you shoot, if not the last picture. Crosby, Stills, Nash, Young, Taylor, and Reeves up in Laurel Canyon at Stephen Stills' house. You can see David pursuing his favorite hobby. So that's Taylor, the drummer, in the back sitting down, and Reeves, the bass player that they got for their CSNY tour. And they hired him from Motown, and they thought he was 18 years old, but he was really 15 years old. And I think he just turned 16 before they went out on the road. But they never knew that. These guys, Spinal Tap. It's funny, I mean, you live in Hollywood and you meet all these people. I mean, the guy with the Michael McKean with the blonde wig, my daughter went to school with his son. So I knew him as a school parent, which often happens here in Hollywood if you have kids. This is On the Road with the Turtles. And the guy second from the left is Mark Volman, and he was my neighbor in Laurel Canyon. And so I went on the road with them one weekend in the Midwest. This was in Wisconsin. And we were driving to some high school, and there was a sign that said cheese with an arrow. He said, look at that, we got to follow those signs. We followed the signs for about 20 minutes, and we came to the Bass Lake Cheese Factory. And we all went in, and they're eating cheese there. That's cheese on sticks, not popsicles. And we got back in the car to leave, and we drove a little ways, and we saw that sign, vegetables. And I said, I have to wait a minute, I have to take a picture of that sign, and they all got out and posed. I love that sign. This is Jackson Browne. This was an idea for the album cover for Late for the Sky, which didn't get used. Glenn Frey had given Jackson this 55 Chevy, and he had given it to a girlfriend. So Jackson called the girlfriend to borrow the car back, and that's her in the back seat waiting for us to finish with her car. That's her feet sticking up on the window. But then we call this one Hanging 12. Here's Richard Pryor up in Beverly Hills. We got a call from Richard's manager and said, "Will you go to his house?" It was the guy who owned the record company. He said, "Go to his house and take a photo for the album cover. That was all, you know. So we went up there late in the morning, knocked on the door. His wife opened the door and said, "You go try to get him up. He won't get out of bed." So we walked back there. We're looking down at Richard Pryor, and he looks up from his pillow. He says, "Just take the picture here in bed. This will be the album cover, me sleeping." We said, "No, come on. We got to do something here. He said, "Well," and he kind of, you know, we talked for a while, and he sat up, and he said, well, if we do anything, I want to do something rootsy," he said. So it was before the movie and the book, but my partner Gary said, "Well, I know an antique shop where this guy has old Aborigine weapons, so I'll go down there and borrow some." And Richard knew where this little cave was up in right, it's up on like Coldwater Canyon, coming down before you get to the big hotel, Beverly Hills. What is it? Yeah, Beverly Hills Hotel. I'm sure there's a house there now, but it was a vacant lot with that little cave, and it looked so much like National Geographic that we had Rick Griffin, the artist, San Francisco artist, draw a border that imitated the, you know, a yellow border with little oak leaf clusters. And so we got a letter from the National Geographic lawyers saying that they were going to sue us for defaming their famous logo unless we change the album. So if you see one of these albums, a 12-inch album with the actual National Geographic thing, it's kind of rare. The next printing, they put little statues of liberty in that yellow instead of the oak leaves. This is America out at an Indian reservation down down south somewhere. We had to ride 2 hours on horseback to get to this little date palm oasis where we spent the night. And my partner Gary wanted that mirror there because he wanted to lay it on the ground so they would look into the mirror, and I would take the picture. It would look like a hole in the ground or something. And the night before, the guy with the hat, Dewey, wanted to climb that mountain to see the bats flying around. And so Gary said, well, and they all went up there, and Gary said, "Just take that mirror with you." And I thought, what is that for, you know? And so they're walking along with the mirror, and I see this thing flashing as they move. This light is flashing, and I just said, yeah, they were far away. I said, "Wait a minute, you know, stand still." And it was the moon coming up behind us in the valley. So that became the back of one of their albums. Here's the Eagles in Joshua Tree. Once again, we left the Troubadour at 2 in the morning when it closed. We drove out there in Land Rovers, climbed the mountain in the dark, and lit a fire. That's peyote buttons bubbling in the teapot there. And we spent a very funny afternoon, and then the next evening, and we did their first album cover out there. Here they are. This is having fun out in the desert. Yeah, more fun than, you know, we should have had in the desert, I think. This is the bag with the peyote buttons right here. God, that was great fun. And then here was for the Desperado album. We got this old rundown movie set out in Negura. I went out there and played cowboys one day, and they were shooting away and falling. This is Jackson Browne laying here dead in the street. They just played cowboys, you know, and we had a great time. And then at the end of the day, oh, is it working? The little arrow is there. Hey, Rich, can you help Sue there with it? Dead in the street with the posse posing behind them with their rifles, which I guess they did a lot in the Old West. They would pose with the dead outlaws. And so we copied that picture. Okay, so there it is, yeah. And there's J.D. Souther on the far end. And then Henley and Randy Meisner, Len Fry, Bernie Ledden. And this is Jackson Browne right here. It was a couple of months when he grew a mustache. And the guy with the rifle on the left is my partner, Gary Burden, the graphic artist. The guy in the white hat is Glenn Johns, the English producer. And next to him is John Hartman, who is their manager. And then the other guys are roadies, except for the guy rolling the cigarette there. That's Boyd Elder, the artist from Texas. So this was the back of the Desperado album. Here's the Morrison Hotel, which is was a real hotel in downtown LA on Hope Street. And we met with the Doors. They called us. They said, "We want you to do our album cover." So we went over and said, "Well, do you have a title?" "No, we don't." I said, "Yeah. Well, do you have any ideas or anything you want to try?" No, they didn't have any ideas. And then the keyboard player, Ray Manzarek, said, "Well, you know, the other day, Dorothy, my wife and I were driving in downtown LA, and we saw this old funky hotel that said Morrison Hotel." And we said, "Wow, that sounds great." And we went right down there. There it was. So we went back a few days later with the group, and we walked in the lobby. The lobby was empty. It had old Salvation Army couches and stuff, and no one was in there except the young guy behind the desk. And I said, "We're just going to be over there taking a few pictures." And he said, "No, you can't. You can't take any pictures. You've got to get the owner's permission." And the owner wasn't there. So we walked outside, and I thought, well, I'll get them to stand in front of that because we'll be on the sidewalk. They can't stop us from doing that. And just then I saw that light go on in the background, and I looked in there, and the guy got in the elevator. He left the desk. So I said, "Run in, quick, run in there." And they hit those marks, you know. I mean, nobody said, "Okay, wait, change places," or "You move this way." They just did that instinctively. And we took one roll of film and got out of there, and that was the album cover. So I think the next one is, oh yeah, I always love it when there's a guest person in the album cover. This guy walked by. If I'm ever shooting a group and I see a bicycle coming down the street, I wait till it's right in the picture, you know. It's always great to have. And then Jim said, "Well, let's go get a drink." It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we went a few blocks. We piled in the guitar player, I think Robbie Krieger's Volkswagen van. And we went a few blocks to Skid Row, where it's all bars and pawn shops. And we didn't know where to stop until somebody saw, "Wow, look, Hard Rock Cafe." So we'll get a beer in there. So we went in there, and we sat right inside the door. You could see a little red stool right inside the door in front of Jim. So here we are, the next picture, please. There we are, sitting right inside the door. I'm standing in the doorway. And Jim loved, I told you, he's very quiet. He's a poet, you know. He liked to observe. He would never come up and start a conversation. He really wanted to hear what people had to say. And so he really was interested in the stories that these guys were telling about their life. And so afterwards, he went outside, and these guys went out. And here he is with his new best friends. They thought he was the nicest young guy. You know, they had no idea who he was or who we were or anything about that, but they sure liked the guy. And, you know, years later, I met a guy, an older fella, who said, when I was a young boy in the 30s, I used to walk by that same bar, the Hard Rock Cafe. So it didn't mean rock and roll. But they got a call as soon as the album, the picture of the Hard Rock Cafe was on the back of Morrison Hotel. They got a call from London, and a voice on the phone said, "Do you mind if we use that name? We're starting a cafe here in London, and we like to call it the Hard Rock Cafe." And they said, "No, go ahead." So that was a big day.